if we can't provide our dogs with outlets for their needs, like running around off leash, without compromising the safety of the general public, so people around us, we get to make very tough decisions. And why it comes to such decisions and such situations, we will talk about in this episode of A Dog Soul, an Empath's Guide to Your Dog's Feelings. So stay tuned and have fun. Alright, so I got this question and I don't really know much about the dog. I don't know the age, I don't know what breeds are in there. I just know that we're talking about a rescue dog, and I know what the problem is. That's basically it. So the problem is that the dog, whenever she's off leash, it's female dog, she runs up to strangers, barking, lunging, growling. She has not bitten anybody, but of course people are not very happy about meeting such a dog, and she does that with every stranger, it seems. And she is reactive on leash as well. But of course, there is a lot more control when she's on leash than when she runs around off leash. Now, I don't know much about her day-to-day life. I don't know much about which needs she has other than running around off leash. Of course, that's a need for many, many dogs. But I get that this is a problem. And the question actually was how her parents, her name's Daisy, that I got. So how Daisy's parents are supposed to address the situation, if she's supposed to be allowed off leash at all anymore or not, and how they could train that. So what we are talking about is aggression. Now, yes, she might not have bitten anybody, but she is doing everything but, right? So she's running up to the people, she's not running away from them, even if she could, right? When she's off leash, she could run away from them, but she doesn't. She runs up to them. It's not better or worse, it's just a fact. And we should consider that in training. We know she's scared. So we know that from, on the one hand, because her parents told me in the question that she's a shy dog, but also because she's doing the whole display, right? A dog who's running up or who's trying to lunge at people on leash out of frustration would not do that off leash. A dog like that would just run up to people, right? Because if frustration is the reason for leash reactivity and you take away the leash, so the movement impairment, you take away the frustration and the reactivity. But since she does that off leash as well, best guess is always fear. Now, what we see, of course, with a dog going forward and not backward is not initially fear, it's rage. So the emotion we see is rage, but the underlying emotion is still fear. So this might be a little bit confusing, or it might look a little bit confusing. But if we want to address what's really going on with the dog, and if we want to have sustainable results, we need to address the underlying emotion first. So we need to address the fear, and the rage will disappear anyway. So what we can do is, first of all, the first question first. No, she should no longer be off leash in areas where there could be other people. Now, there are areas where there are no other people, like sniff spots or other fenced-in areas you could just rent, or very remote areas you could drive to or whatever. Like where I live, you basically never meet anybody. And if you do meet anybody, you see them and you can just walk away. There's enough space for that. In any other area, I would leave the leash on and maybe even train a muzzle. It depends. If there is absolutely no bite risk, then it might not be necessary. But if it's a possibility that Daisy bites, I would train a muzzle. We have to keep in mind that it's our responsibility to keep the public safe, right? To keep people who come across our dogs safe. It's not their fault that they meet our dogs, right? So we really have to take care of our dogs and really watch out for anything that could potentially be dangerous. So this is the first thing. When it comes to training, It really depends on so many things. And since I don't know much about Daisy, I can only give very general advice. So if you have a dog who is a little bit insecure around people or shy around people, this might also be what you can do. First things first, the happier and the more fulfilled our dogs are in their day-to-day life, the easier the training is, the faster the process is, and the sooner we see the results we want, the more we can ask of them and all these things. So we need to take care of our dog's needs first. Emotional, physical, mental, all those things. So what Daisy's parents can look out for is, what are Daisy's hobbies? And does she get to do as many of them as possible? It's not possible most of the time for our dogs to just go after every hobby, like chasing wildlife, right? That's a very common hobby we cannot allow. But things like social interaction or exploring or sniffing or digging or rolling around in the grass or watching stuff or sunbathing or contact with the caregivers, so Daisy's parents, all these things. The next question would be, how much does Daisy sleep and rest during the day? That gives us an idea about the stress level, especially when it comes to alone time. This is so important with reactivity because a higher stress level always contributes to reactivity. It's the same thing for us, right? If we have a really bad day and a bunch of things happening, like the alarm doesn't work, so we get up late. Then we spill the coffee, so we have to get changed again, and we're even later. Then the car won't start. Then we are finally in the car and we start driving away. Then we have forgotten something, we need to go back, and we are even later. Then we finally are on our way and somebody cuts us off. Usually, even if we are pretty laid-back drivers and we're pretty relaxed, if we had a morning like that, we might call that person names. We might swear in the car, we might really get angry. And that's because we're stressed. And it's the same thing for our dogs. They might be pretty relaxed, usually, but if they're stressed, they get triggered more easily into reactivity, right? So the more we can lower the stress level overall, doesn't mean that they are relaxed all the time, right? That's not healthy either. So we need an up and down in stress and relaxation. But the overall stress level, if we can lower that, we will probably lower the reactivity as well. And we can also see that in things like leash pulling, chasing stuff, listening, all those things. So stress really shows up in many, many, many different ways in our dogs' lives. Tell me in the comments if you have ever seen your dog stressed and what your dog did compared to when he's not stressed. I'd love to know. My dog Sammy, for example, when he's stressed, he used to chase the cat when we still had our cats, and he starts digging. When he's not stressed, he doesn't do that. So that is completely going away as soon as the stress level lowers. So you see, problem behavior can completely disappear if we take care of the stress. Now, what we also need to have a look at, or Daisy's parents need to have a look at, is the overall handling. That's also something that doesn't seem to be related to meeting people on the street, but it is because, again, it contributes to the stress level. So even if you want to work force-free in training, if you don't handle your dog force-free in day-to-day life, it's not that relevant what you do in training anymore. So, for example, you work with force-free methods in training, but at home, when your dog barks, you spray him with a water bottle. That startles your dog, and he stops barking, so it works, right? But it's still an aversive stimulus, so you do something uncomfortable to your dog, and it does something with the relationship. And as soon as we compromise our relationship with our dogs, it affects the day-to-day life, and it affects other areas of our dogs' lives. So this is also something we see again in reactivity. Our dogs need to feel safe around us and in their homes. And we can provide that with only handling them with care and really being mindful of what we're doing with them. And sometimes even putting too much pressure on them can diminish the well-being. And pressure is always something the recipient decides upon. Like for my dog Sammy, if I try to encourage him to come with me with, come on, let's go over there, come on, you can do it, he feels pressured and he stops with whatever he was doing. So this is so uncomfortable for him, and I'm not doing anything else. I'm not pulling or anything. It's just that motivating speech I'm giving him, and that's too much. So you see, it's really the recipient deciding if something is okay or not. So watch your dog. And if that's taken care of, then Daisy's parents can start training on people in particular. And what we usually want with reactive dogs is that they just ignore whatever they were reacting toward, right? So in this case, people. We want Daisy to ignore people. And for that, she needs to learn something she can do instead. And again, this is very individual, and it's really dependent on what Daisy likes to do, what she can already do, what she can learn pretty quickly. A relatively safe bet in most cases is sniffing. Sniffing is something we can get our dogs to do pretty quickly, usually, and it feels good on many different levels. So this is something we can introduce in a variety of situations first. And whenever our dogs are fluent in it, we can take it to more difficult situations, like when the trigger, in this case a person, is present. And the really nice advantage of people as triggers is that we can pretty easily pick areas where people are just bustling around and not minding us with our dogs, like parking lots. Parking lots are awesome for training. We can pick the distance we need. People don't mind a trainer or a person with a dog doing their things over there. They're just doing their shopping and minding their own business. So we can actually do our thing. And whenever that works well, we can take it into more realistic, more day-to-day life situations. And only after this works really well on leash, we can try it off leash. But for that, what's also important would be to have a really strong recall and maybe even an automatic recall. So the automatic recall would be see another person, come to me. So that Daisy doesn't need mom to cue her to come back, but she does it on her own. And that's also something that takes time in training. Yes, it takes a lot of repetitions. Yes, but it is a real game changer because Daisy cannot run up to mom and bark at the stranger at the same time. It's not compatible. So Daisy would have to make a choice. And if we work with rewards and really good rewards, we can get Daisy to choose the recall reliably. And that would pretty much take care of the whole running up to strangers and barking at them thing. Now, since I don't know Daisy and I'm not sure how deeply rooted this behavior already is, I cannot really make a prognosis of how fast this would work or if it is the right choice for Daisy or if another training path would work better or faster. But those two techniques are pretty safe to do on their own, right? Or for you, if you have a reactive dog and you want to try something, those two things are pretty easy to do on your own. Just watch out for your dog's body language, watch out for your dog's tension. So if you see your dog tensing up around another person, you know that you're getting close to the point of no return. And the point of no return is the last moment you can actually tell your dog what you want and help your dog out before your dog's reacting. So we need to watch out for that, of course. And with that in mind, I wish you a lot of fun training and we'll see each other next time. Bye!